I mean, it's obviously not the same words, but I. Anyone? I'll give another minute. Who is that? Sorry, I didn't see. Awesome, yes. Water, water everywhere, nor a drop to drink. It's an ancient mariner's poem. It's one of my most favorite poems. And since class 9, I've always wanted to use that somewhere. And finally, I got the chance to use that. So it's just a parody of that. So it's rhyming, it's fun. It's actually a mariner's poem where it's like, they're traveling, they get lost at sea, and there is water everywhere, but they can't use it. A little bit of a parody here that there's agents everywhere, but I don't know what the hell is going on. That kind of a play. But to introduce myself, I'm Shreya Raital. I'm from Microsoft Azure PostgreSQL team. I primarily work on DevX and AI features in PostgreSQL for Azure. And a little bit more about me. I've been building agents since I was in class 11. And I didn't even know that I was building an agent back then. How many of you have played the game Pac-Man? Pac-Man? Definitely most of you, right? So in class 11, our teacher came up and she said, you got a 5-mark. I was in Central CBSE board, and she was like, in class 12, there's going to be a 5-mark project, just 5 marks, right? But I want all of you to build the best project you can using C and C++. Learn graphics, do whatever you want, and do the best project you can. And at that time, I was playing Pac-Man, and I was like, why not do this, right? And you know how the ghosts chase the Pac-Man, right? It's actually the most fundamental, rudimentary AI agent that you can actually develop, and I'll tell you which kind of agent it falls into. It's not the current day AI, but it's a rule-based, simple, model-based AI. So that's where I started loving computer science. Did computer science BTech. I took AI ML in engineering as well, and then now in Microsoft working on all of these AI features. So that's enough about me, right? And though I'm from Microsoft for this session, though I put the logo there, in this session I'll try my best to keep Microsoft stuff to a minimum. We're going to talk agents, and then we're going to talk PostgreSQL. Cool? All right. So first, and there'll be many of these quick pulse checks, and I want you all to be energetic because I've been seeing you all from morning and you're barely raising your hands. I do not want that now. I'm going to do a general check because I know for some of you this is not your preferred talk for 11 a.m., but you're all here now. So how many of you are admins in the admin side of the world? Not necessarily admins. Oh, majority. Not majority, more than half maybe, but definitely not a winning majority. Developers, app developers, PostgreSQL developers. Cool. And how many of you are building AI apps and agents loosely? Awesome. Oh, there are at least 15, 20 of you. Great. And I'll just put it out there if anyone wants to speak up. And if had chosen this session, what brought you to this session other than the fact that you were pushed to, right? What brought you to this session today? Is there anyone who wants to speak up? Anything you're looking forward to in this session? Anyone at all? Oh, okay. So MCP for Postgres, it's a MCP server for all observability. Oh, okay. Awesome. This might be a little more rudimentary session for you here at that level. But thanks for sharing that. Your name? Excellent. So I'm going to get started right away with the agenda. So there's 4 parts to it. First part, I'm going to talk only AI agents, nothing PostgreSQL, little bit PostgreSQL, about what are they, why do we need it. Then we'll go to agents plus PostgreSQL. I'll show you a couple of cool demos which are actually available online for you to try and test out as well. And then we'll go to how do we we'll just focus on the retrieval part of it. So how can we make sure that the agents can retrieve PostgreSQL content in the best possible way? Some of these content might be repeated in the upcoming sessions where they're talking pgvector or scaling. So I'm going to keep that to a light minimum. I just realized that there's 2 full sessions for it. And then finally, we'll close off with the latest trends and latest terms that are there in the agentic world. And of course, there'll be Q&A, but feel free to just stop me in between if you have questions anywhere, right? So the first thing, and most of you might be familiar with this already, the word agents or the agent buzz is not new. It has been very, very fundamental to artificial intelligence. It's just that when most of us started learning AI, we directly got pushed into ML and we started learning from ML. So ML was AI in our mind, and that's where the disconnect came. In fact, I'm going to show the next couple of slides, which is picked up from a children's textbook, which is a high school children's textbook, and this is how they explain AI to them, right? The first question they ask is, what makes a human intelligent, right? A human is intelligent if he has perception, reasoning, problem solving, using language. Now we call it natural language processing, and then learning, right? These are the 5 things that are required to make any human intelligent. And what is artificial intelligence? It's essentially making a machine as smart as possible as a human. That is how they define it to them. And they call the entire artificial intelligence system as an AI agent when kids are studying in school. And the further I speak about agents, and you can see this is picked up from a textbook, right? The graphics are cute. So an agent is one who has sensors and uses the sensors to understand what's going on in the environment. So it's called a percept. Whatever they're perceiving is called a percept sequence. And then they'll have an agent program. The question mark is the agent program. We'll talk more about what the program is. And they will be able to do actions back to the environment. So if anything is, if it has to be called an agent, it has to have all of these elements, right? Now, effectors is what they teach kids. Actuators is what we are more familiar with. I don't know if it's just a British American thing, but this is how, and I want to take the cute image out because then your mind automatically goes to robots, right? So I'm putting blocks so that you come back to reality and you're just looking at apps, right? So agents essentially are just this. Now, the fundamental, a good rational agent, again, this is from a school textbook, says, not school textbook, this is from a college textbook, I'm advancing slowly, right, coming to the present day. A good rational agent must maximize a performance measure, which could be a goal, which could be satisfaction, user satisfaction, could be anything, but it has to have a performance measure, which it has to define and maximize. And when it has to maximize, what it needs to do is it has to plan. So if a goal is given to it, it could be very general, it could be just a satisfaction goal, it need not be a task level goal. It needs to find out how to break down the goals and actually plan if other agents are required, what are the steps it needs to do, all of this. A good rational agent must be able to plan. The second is it should have knowledge of the environment. When I say environment, in the generative AI world, right, when we are thinking of PostgreSQL, we are thinking of data stored in PostgreSQL, we're thinking of apps, we're thinking of agents, which are essentially chatbots. The environment is the context, which is the historical data, which is the user data. So the environment essentially shrinks down to the user and user's data, right? That's the environment at this point. So it needs to have prior knowledge of the environment. It needs to be able to perceive and keep a percept sequence, which means it needs to have memory. So it needs to perceive and understand as well as remember. So perception, understanding, memory, I usually put it under one bucket for maintaining a percept sequence. And finally, it needs to perform actions. In the generative AI world, it's just writing back to the user saying, this is the answer, right? The simplest thing is that. But I'll show you more examples of what is the extent you can do. And these actions are done through tools. And tools are the common word used for all kind of actions. It could be vector search on databases. It could be just searching on the internet. It could be a calculator. Any action it needs to do is done through tools. So this is how you define an agent, right? Now, there are multiple types of agents, and we'll go one by one through all of them as well. If at any point you're finding it boring, just raise your hand. I'll actually do a pulse check in a while. to check if it's really slow for you or you want me to speed up. But the types of agents are essentially reflex agents, simple reflex agents, model reflex agents, and I'll walk through all of them. Just keep this in mind, right? The first, and again, textbook, right? This is from Modern Approach to Artificial Intelligence by Russell and Norwick. A really good book to, if you have the patience, to read and understand how agentic AI actually is, and it actually has the entire of AI, ML, deep learning, all of it tied into a really nice story, really worth reading, and I'll share a reference at the end. So a simple reflex agent essentially means it perceives the world, whatever it sees, it has some conditions, it has like an if-else statement. If I get this sensor, I will do this action, end of it, right? That's all that the knowledge it has. You can think of it like your AC, right? If the temperature goes down, temperature goes up and the thermostat understands that the temperature has gone up, then turn on, right? It's as simple as that. Whereas in the generative AI, the Postgres generative AI world, it is actually vector search. Even if you're doing simple SQL query or a vector search, just that, right? You're not doing anything else. It's just that. You're given a query, you will search, there is an action that you do, and you give it back. End of story, right? That is a simple reflex agent. So even if you're doing, even now, if you're doing simple vector search, you can consider it as a simple reflex agent that you have built already. Now, model-based reflex agent is one step higher, where it understands and maintains the state of the world right now. So it's not just that, I see something, I reply. Because in the simple reflex agent, what happens is, what we assume is that the agent can see the whole world and knows everything. So it can take actions very properly. So if I give a search, I know the answer. There's one answer and I can give you the perfect answer, right? That's when it's a simple reflex agent. But a model-based reflex agent actually has a little more to it. In the real world scenario, you can think of, how those robots perform vacuuming, right? They're kind of famous now, right? Or even my Pac-Man that I did. It's not just about, turn right or turn left, what should I do after I turn right or turn left? It'll actually maintain the entire model of the environment. It knows how big the environment is, it knows where there are, there are blockers, where there are chairs, all of that, and it keeps updating its state. And this model of the world is not just by itself. Like, for example, maybe a robot moves and knocks something down, and so the world changed. That is one part of it. But otherwise, there are other factors, right, due to which the world changes. So that is where a model-based agent comes into picture, where it also maintains the state of the world and uses that information, appends that information, uses both the rules as well as the model to come out. Now, coming back to our reality, which is the Gen AI Postgres world, if you have some sort of, like structured model, like user preferences are stored separately, right? So you're not just doing a vector search, you're also using a little bit of user preferences. You're using the product data, there are categories. So you're using a little more of the reality to append and find the best answer, which at the end of the day, it's like an and at the where clause, right? It's a filter, it's a simple filter in the where clause. That becomes a model-based agent. It's not a simple vector search, you've got more data to support it. So that becomes a model-based agent. Then you go to goal-based agents, and this is where the real agents come into picture, where they all have one goal, right? Goal-based agents usually have one goal. And for example, think of a drone is flying and it has to go reach a place, with making sure that it's not going to get struck down by lightning, right? Simple like that, right? So the goal is reaching the place without lightning being hit. So what it must do is, it cannot just take a right and left based on the direction. After it takes a right, it needs to think, okay, is the weather good here? Next, should I take a right or left, or should I go forward? If I go forward, there might be lightning, there might be rain. If I go left, there may not be. So there is a whole state graph formed there, right? So essentially, you are in place 1. When I go to place 2, what will happen to me? Will I reach the goal? Will it be bad for me? Will it be good for me? Should I go or not? So there's a planning and there is a searching. So think of it as a graph, full graph, right? Where you will at each point move to the next point in the graph and find the best search to reach the destination, to reach the goal. So the only thing it will keep doing is at every state, it will go, it will check, did I reach the goal? No. okay, where do I go next? If I go here, this will happen, that will happen, this will happen. I'll move to the next place. Goal is reached? No. So it goes on like that till the goal is reached. Again, simple. In real life, if example, if you take, like I said, the drone makes sense, right? But for in the Gen AI Postgres world, right, you can think of it as the search query comes as find me products which are less than 2000 rupee. Okay, maybe find me a phone which is less than 20K, right? Which I recently did, and it gave me. The whole purpose is okay. It has to be less than 20K. That is the goal. So it needs to first clarify intent in case there aren't any below 20K. It needs to come back, ask if there are, if you're okay with a little more. All of that comes into picture. Then when you're searching, it needs to re-rank. Well, there might be many phones under 20K. It needs to find the best out of that based on relevance. So goal-based agent starts behaving like a true agent. There are multiple tasks where it goes back to the user, there's more interaction, and to reach the final goal. And usually goal-based agents are just problem-solving agents. So they traverse, search, plan, and reach the goal. And then we have utility-based agents, where it's essentially a goal-based agent, but if you have multiple goals, then you can't just say, there's no one goal that you can reach, right? For example, I can say, I want a phone less than 20K, but it should have good battery, it should be fast, to be performant. If I give him 4 goals like that, then it turns into a utility where the purpose of the agent is to make you happy, make the user happy. And this is the current day chatbots, etc., that you see in the world, where the intent is to make you happy. Are you satisfied with my answer? That is the purpose, right? So there are multiple goals, some are conflicting. So you need to do more planning. You need to be not just looking at one of the metrics. So you need filters, you will need multiple plannings, multiple iterations, ranking, vector search, so much and so much more. And these are the kind of agents that are a bare minimum for being called as an agent these days, because that's what everyone's building. But then there's a little more, right? There's a learning agent. Now, this performance element that you see out there, it could be any agent. It could be a simple reflex agent, model-based, any of them that you saw so far. But if you add a learning element to it, where at every point someone's checking for feedback, checking if it is good, there is a self-correction, there is a self-learning mode that is added to it, it becomes a learning agent. And in some few cool places, because as humans, right, how do we learn new things? We read, we follow rules, all of that is fine. But sometimes we experiment, right? That's when we learn the most, when we experiment and go out of the way. That's why we also have, few of the agents have problem generators or creativity side of the things, where they try to be a little more creative and generate more fun responses, see if that works, and then use that for their own learning to make sure that that works, right? Sometimes some quirky words, some casual words work. So that is a good learning agent. And again, now most of the agents are moving on to become learning agents as well. And it's sometimes just not enough. One agent is not enough. And that's where multi-agent systems come into picture, or MAS. Sometimes they're hierarchical, sometimes they're not. There's one coordinator, and it could be all sorts of graphs. But all multi-agent systems are what is the current day agentic AI architectures. So if you have something to build and you have specialized tasks that each of the agents need to do, it's best to modularize them, have each of the agents deal with their task, do some sort of coordination, orchestration between them, and deliver end results. So MAS is the current way of building apps, and this is where everyone is headed right now, right? So in summary, right, first is goals required for an agent. It has to be a problem-solving agent, has to have a goal, should plan the steps, it should do the search and reach the goal. Then you will add a little bit of knowledge to it, like structured knowledge, where you add your user preferences. All of these are additional knowledge that you provide rather than the simple problem, which is the search. Then you add a learning element, which is the cool thing where the agent starts to learn. And most importantly, you have to have generative AI, because you need to talk to a human. So generative natural language processes, perception, generation, all of it is required. And this is not just applicable to for us, it's just right now agents are just generative AI agents. But actually in the rest of the world who are not IT professionals are not looking at it as generative AI agents, right? They're building really cool robots. That's what we used to call it, robotics and AI in robots. They also follow the same process. These are all the fundamentals to any kind of agents. You can apply it as you wish to your agentic scenario, right? So now, to summarize again, another summary. This is what I 7 things for a generative AI agent. I'll come to it. First is, like I said earlier, right? Anything perceiving, percept is perception, understanding, memory. All of it needs to be there. It has to be good. Dynamic task decomposition, planning. So when a goal is given, you need to know how to plan, break them down, and maximize the performance. And then you have retrieval and generation, which most of us are kind of familiar with because we are database folks. So you need to not only do proper semantic search, you also need to be able to do stuff like don't hallucinate. You should not, the agent should not hallucinate. Hallucination is all fun and games, but when it comes to real life enterprise projects, any hallucination can be deadly, right? And then you also need to have source attribution and fact verification, which is essentially citing where did I find this resource. So if, for example, you might have worked with GenAI and it gives you sometimes really rubbish, right? If you talk to ChatGPT, it will tell you some things which actually aren't true. But if you make sure that it cites and you make it explicitly cite where the source is, then things get a little more real. So, and it's actually more important for you when you want to do follow-up steps after you get the citation. And then you have tool use and orchestration, fundamental actions, right? And then self-correction, feedback, the learning part of it. And finally, because most of us are building something mission critical in our own sense, right? We want it to be safe, or we want the data to be safe, we want it to be reliable, we need to have trust. So this is the last one, which is also essential. While most people are still in the trial phases, when you're building enterprise architectures, you need to have all 7 of them. So I'm going to pause now. Are you okay with the pace? Is it too slow? Do you want me to speed up? Slow? Who says slow? Cool, then I'm going to go this slow. All right. Now we go to PostgreSQL. You see this elephant in all my presentations because I love that representation of the elephant, and it's on our stickers and everything. So excuse me for that. I don't use the typical elephant. But PostgreSQL is perfect for building AI agents or even AI apps. And why? Earlier, he has already said that the reason is AI native capabilities like PG vector and mostly multimodal data support. It's not just structured data that PostgreSQL supports, right? You can have semi-structured JSONB, you can have graph through extensions, you can have spatial, time series, all of these data in PostgreSQL, and it becomes even more perfect because right now, yes, we're all doing a little bit of text, right? But as it evolves, it's more multimodal than you will imagine, and it will be very useful, and there's a huge scope for potential for PostgreSQL. I put model integrations outside because it's not technically native, but it can be with extensions, with the right extensions, with the right managed services, if you wish. Like, for example, I think LIDB gives query engine. There is an LIDB query engine which actually has full inbuilt model integrations. It has Google ML. Azure has Azure AI, and so on and so forth. And I think there's a session later today on Postgres ML. So all of these help with model integrations as well. What is model integration? For all of this, right now, we are not building our own brain, right? The brain behind all of it, behind the agent, is going to be through an LLM, a large language model, through your GPTs or your rankers. There are so many out there, but it's always going to be an LLM. And they're primarily, and you will need to access them for your search. And then, of course, the ecosystem advantage, right? Postgres actually works with almost all of the AI frameworks, be it LangGraph, LangChain, LlamaIndex, Crew AI, so many more out there. It works with all of them, all languages, all development tools. It's you all know this already. And it's open source, it's community driven, all the docs are out there, the code is out there, the LLMs have trained on that data, so they are familiar with PostgreSQL and can work better. And you can do SQL along with AI. You can do SQL queries along with your AI vector search. And finally, Postgres is performant, it's scalable. So that helps when you are, because AI is definitely a large, it requires a large compute, and therefore PostgreSQL for perfect for it. And it's not just for context retrieval. Don't think of Postgres as only going to help with data, serving data with RAG architectures where you're giving data back to the AI agents and the AI agents will do something with it. No, Postgres can also be used for memory of the agents, which is when, as and when the interactions go ahead, you can actually store memory in Postgres agents, and it's supported in multiple frameworks as well, right? So information retrieval is where we'll start from. So a query goes in, an agent which is using LLMs also uses tools. It can do vector search, queries, and it's not just vector search. It can do anything. It can search the web. It can do calculations. It can do all of it, unless as long as you write those tools for it. So it's a little more advanced version than the typical RAG. In a typical RAG or a retrieval augmented generation, what it means is when a query comes in, a vector search is done on your database, and then you just send it to an LLM to kind of generate a response for it and send it back. That's it. That's what a RAG architecture is. It was quite famous 6 months ago as well, right? Before agents became everything. So RAG is important, but it's not enough, right? That's where agents come in, where it's not just that vector search, that entire thing is just a tool, and it can use many more other tools, giving it so much more flexibility to do anything. More autonomous as well, right? It can choose what tools is best for a given task. And then we go to single agent versus the mass, right? The multi-agent architecture. A single agent is great when you want simplicity, you have a definite task, you have classification to do, you have generation to do, Q&A to do. It's simple, right? You can define it in one agent, it's good. But when you need to do more specialized tasks, and I'm going to show you an example soon, where, for example, you're building a product personalization agent or something like that, you have multiple things to do within that. So that's when a multi-agent comes into picture, so that each agent is specialized in one task. There is a planner, and then there is one coordinator who will get all of it together and send responses. Right? That's where multi-agents come into picture, and you can transition anytime from a single agent to multi-agent. If you're starting out new, start off with a single agent, see if that's enough for you. If it's not, you can build specialized, you can distribute the task. I often think of it as, and it's a very crude comparison, when we were kids and we were learning functions, right? How we could write, object-oriented programming. We could write the whole thing in a procedural program, we could fit it in, but instead you can have specialized classes, specialized functions, tools, all of it, and then bring them all together. It just makes much more flexible to scale as well, right? That's why a multi-agent model, it brings a little more autonomy into things. And this is an example of a personalization agent. So there's a user who wants basically personalized recommendations for searching on the, there's a website, I need to search for a product. They'll use this multi-agent system, all right? So first there's a planning agent who will decide whether an inventory agent is required, is the product there or not. A personalization agent itself who will personalize the right things for the customer, find out the right answers to give, who will find out what's the right, based on his user preferences, what's the right thing that he would want to see, those things. And then there's a review agent who will look at reviews. And then there's finally a presentation agent who will surface it back to the product page, right? This way of splitting things helps you innovate, move around, gives autonomy to each skills individually. So this is how, and we're going to see a demo, and this is an agentic shop, okay? And this is a pre-recorded demo because I don't trust my internet or my computer, even though it's a Surface. This is a agentic shop where a customer can find anything and kind of, it evolves as it goes, all right? So let's take a look. First, let's go ahead and do a search for headphones with deep bass for music. That's the search that we gave. Now, underneath it, it's all using Llama Index. A multi-agent system is being done, where there is a routing agent which will find out what needs to be done. So it is identified that the search tool is required. There's no sentiment here. We didn't say best or anything. So it's just the search tool. So that will return the results for this. Now I click on one of it. That's when the personalization agent comes into picture. So you can see that the deep bass is highlighted there, right? Now I can see the entire description. I will take a look at the agentic flow. You'll see that initially a planning agent comes into picture, and then the product personalization agent is chosen. Here there is nothing to do with reviews, little bit with inventory, and that's about it, and it will present it back. Now what I'm going to do is, actually we'll take a look at the planning agent where there are user preferences. So this is where your user preferences are stored, and this has been gotten by repeated searches. So I've done a bunch of searches which are dummy searches, which has gotten this much for me. And it will actually determine what, this is the planning agent, determines in the output what are the next two agents that need to be triggered, right? Now we'll go ahead and do a little more where we'll say show me the review summary as well in my personalization, right? So it will be that adaptive if you build with agents. So I just say show summary of reviews, and it will add to the personalization section a review summary, right? Let's give it some time. Yes, for the searches, yes. Yes. So for the agents, it's using the Llama index. I'll come to it. Alright. So the review summary is here because it's pre-recorded. I need to go with the flow. All right. So you can see that it will call, the planning agent now knows that it needs to call a review agent as well because I've asked for reviews. Right? So that's what it does, and you can actually see that it gets the content of all three of it into the presentation layer at the end, right? I don't know if that was it. Did I record more? Let me check. Oh, there's a little bit more. All right, so I think I'm going to show you the review agent itself, which actually, yeah, the user preferences, the user query, the output is what I'm trying to show here, where it says the output comes in. Right now, more than that is also agent memory, right? So I mentioned this. We can use it for agent memory, where you can actually store the user interactions in Postgres as well, and you can do self-correction feedback as well. And we'll directly see this in action, where for this we're going to go search for reviews, and it's going to yeah. So this is the user preference right now, right? So all of this is memory. Whatever I've queried again and again, it's been stored over here. Now I'm going to see how we can update the memory. So I can just say, you're showing me the summary of reviews now, but always show me a summary of reviews. And it's just going to do that and update the memory. And basically when I go in and write that, second, yeah. So it'll just make, the agent will know which tool to use, right? Which is the memory updation tool. So there are, all of these are mentioned as tools for an agent, and the agent, because it's using LLMs, know which tool to call and make the right call for it. So here, if you go and see the user preferences in the planning in the personalization agent, you can see that prefers to always use summary of reviews is added to the agent. So that's, and now if you go and click on a phone as well, you will see the review highlights shown there because it now knows that it needs to always show me the reviews. That's my user preference updated. And in there's also a self-correction flow, which is essentially an evaluation agent is added to the whole thing. So we've given a, so the evaluation agent is added to the whole thing. And basically, if there are any mistakes that have come up from any of these agents, it will take a look. For example, here there are some database IDs that have come up already. So I need to clear that up, right? So it will re-trigger the review agent saying, go fix that. And the review agent will now be able to redo it. So the review agent 1 had that mistake, and the review agent 2's prompt essentially says that, fix that, don't show me the IDs. So that's how self-correction works as well. And all of this is supported through any agentic framework. So the question you asked, right? We've used Llama Index for this one. So it's quite simple. You just need to plan out each of the agents, and you need to, there's an orchestration framework. I'm not going to go into the syntax of it, but how it works, I'll jump to that, is you will, when I say build a tool, it's as simple as that. Your vector search is now embedded into a tool for the agent, right? You define functions like this which are called tools, you give a descriptor on the top which says this is query the agent's knowledge base using vector similarity. So the agent uses the descriptor to decide which tool to use, and it just does that. And basically the code is just vector search, right? So this you can, I mean, almost all of the frameworks that I mentioned are probably more or less the same, just a little bit change in there. Sorry? This is, I think, text embedding ADA was used, and yeah, text embedding. Basically, it's just a query, user query. All right, so this I'm just going to leave it here. There are multiple frameworks. The bottom rows are new. They're growing. They're amazing, but they're still growing, right? The adoption's crazy, but it's still not perfect. The top three are a little more heavier enterprise users and quite well established by now. At least LangGraph and Llama Index are. And they're all flexible, but in terms of ease of use, Llama Index is the easiest to use. Easy API is very simple to understand and adapt. But LangGraph is the best because for the planning side of it, it's got agentic graph natively in it. So it's all agents are natively prepared as graphs, and it's a little difficult to learn and use, but it's quite good. And semantic kernel, for me, it's more or less for enterprise readiness. So while memory, all of it, the basics, almost all of them have it, semantic kernel has very good integration with enterprise enterprise systems, and it could be hosted anywhere in your enterprise. And that's, I think that's about it in terms of that. And I think we don't have much time, but I know we have another session for vector search, so I'm not going to go into the details of vector search. PG vector, you have another session for it, and I'm just going to leave all of this as well for now. Vector indexing, I'm sure, will be covered, and there's other vector indexes as well to use. Keep in mind some of these, right? These are cooler and more efficient than the typically IVF flat and HNSW that are inbuilt into PG vector. And but I want to spend a little more time on accuracy improvement. The first one is addressing the scale. If you're growing in scale, then you have to you will use indexing. But for accuracy, it's semantic ranking and knowledge graphs that you should think about. And semantic ranking, how many of you are familiar with what GPT transformers are different from BERT transformers? Do you know GPT and BERT? Others, I think someone there. Perfect. So essentially, this is encoder only, which means that GPT, essentially how it's trained is you give one word and you're expected to it's expected to infer the next word. So that is how the training and inferring is done in GPT. So it's sequential. Whereas BERT and these kind of models, encoder models, learn with both ways, both directions, not one way like one after the other. It actually finds the middle word when two other phrases are given, what should be the middle word. That's how it learns. So it knows better understanding of semantics than GPT, right? So that's where you use your normal vector search first, that's good. And then on top of it, do a semantic re-ranking with the text itself, which will make it much more semantically meaningful than simple vector search. And there are a lot of semantic AI operators in Google ML and Azure AI and so forth, which you can use, which essentially let you call rankers within the database. And knowledge graphs, my favorite thing, because graphs are better ways to store relationships. Knowledge graphs are the way to go. GraphRag is a whole other world which I'll not cover today, but it's possible in Postgres because of an extension, Apache Age. And finally, let's conclude, right? AI agents, single agents. Agentic AI is the architecture, it's the larger paradigm which use multiple multi-agentic systems, a lot of collaboration and all of that. So that is the difference. New words, MCP. MCP is actually an open protocol just to standardize how agent talks to all tools. It has to be standardized. It's like a USB-C port, right? It's easy to talk. LLMs talking to ones. So it essentially will have a client-server architecture, and it will make sure that all the thing is used in the same, all the resources are found the same way. And finally, there is the A2A protocol, which defines how, again through Google, which defines how agents talk to each other. And there's more to it that you can learn online, but these are complementary protocols, A2A and the other one. So that's it. These are a few of the resources that you can use. I personally recommend Agentic Shop. Please do check it out. All right. and I don't think we have time for Q&A, but please come visit us in the booth and scan it and get a free activity book. We've got activity books for all of you, so please come over and collect them. And we've got pens and luggage tags as well. And these are a couple of other things that I love this podcast that is run by Claire, who was part of Citus Group earlier. And she does really cool Postgres sessions, and we have a conference as well on everything Postgres. So stay tuned. I'm so sorry for going about time for the next session, but thank you all.